If, like me, you've ever fancied yourself as Tony Stark, now's your chance to put yourself inside the Iron Man costume. It's another tutorial of how to use Photoshop, and this time we're going to look at how we could put ourselves inside the mask. So, what we're going to do first of all is we're going to download Iron Man, and I'm going to put that picture on my desktop, and I'm going to right click or control click, and I'm going to open with Adobe Photoshop, and there's a picture of Iron Man, and that's my background. I'm just going to zoom in so I get a nice bit of a close look at Iron Man there. Now the next thing I need is a picture of me to put inside, so I've gone to Photo Booth and I've taken my picture. Now to make this nice and easy, I've held up a nice white sheet behind me and took my picture. I've got one here with a black sheet, but we're going to use that for something different. But this one I did against a white sheet, and that white sheet makes it really easy to use one of the many methods that we could use to cut our head out. But first of all, we need this picture. So again, do I need to stick it on the desktop? I think I might be able to drag it on, and it is, and you can see that's a whopping great big picture of me. So I'm just going to hit the Move tool, make sure there's a tick in the Show Transform box, and if I just grab this, I can see the handles then, and I should be able to scale that image right down and get my head to a similar size to Tony Stark. And to make it a little bit easier, I'm just going to drop the opacity down so I'm sort of transparent. And I'll see if I can get my eyes in the same place. That's a similar place, but you can see the head's not big enough. So I'm going to hold Shift and Alt, and that will scale it from the middle. It's getting up to the right size. Let's just line those eyes up. Maybe just rotate the head a little bit. Just move it over. And I think you can see, look at that, I'm a dead ringer for Tony Stark. So let's up the opacity. You can see around the edge, it's got a hard line, and that's because it's still saying, do you need to move or resize me or change me anymore? I don't, so I'm going to press Enter or the return key, and that will just confirm the scaling that we've done, or it should have done, which is apply the transformation. So now I want to cut out my head. So there's lots of different ways I could do this. I'm going to do it nice and quickly with the magnetic lasso. I'm not going to do it very accurately because this is a quick tutorial. You could probably spend a little bit more time. So I'm just going round the edge of my head like that, and round we go. Where there's a little corner I like to click, or anywhere it looks like it's not going to follow the outline exactly. It just helps the magnetic lasso do its job. And let's just go around my chinny chin chin. There it is. And again, because I've got a white shirt, this makes it easy. And the white background makes finding that edge quite easy as well. Really helping the magnetic lasso along there. So that's my head cut out. Now I'm not going to cut or delete anything. I'm going to use a mask. And it's dead easy to do. Down here, this button looks like a little sort of black and white Japanese flag. Click that button and I've got an instant mask, and there's my head cut out. I'm going to use the Move tool. In fact, I don't need to move tool, probably lined it up perfectly just before with the opacity. So next job is to actually put my head inside the mask, because my head's in front of it at the moment. So I'm going to duplicate my background, so I'm going to control click and I'm going to duplicate that layer, and let's call it mask. There it is, and let's put that up there, so we're back to seeing Tony Stark's face. What I now need to do is really look closely at this mask, and let's see if we can find the edges. And I'm going to do this one. I think I could probably get away with the polygonal lasso and do this nice and quickly. Now I'm looking down here, and I think this is the edge, just as we click along down here, and there's a bit of a sort of up around, it's not his beard here, that's sort of the top of the mask, and so this is like the thickness of the actual mask itself. It gets a bit vague here, so I'm just going to take it up to about there, just similar to the one on the other side, and from there just take it down, let's go across, up. Maybe the magnetic lasso might have been better at this point. I could have combined cutouts. There we are, and that's him. And if I clicked mask this time, of course what it would leave is Tony Stark, and I don't want Tony Stark, I want the opposite. So I'm going to go to select and inverse, and now it's selected everything but that. So when I click the mask button, look, there we go, we can see my face. Now the difference here, if we look, you can see my face is slightly different colour to Tony's, mainly because the lighting isn't the same, and also because his face is inside the mask. So I'm happy that the sort of mask is okay. I'm happy with that, but I need to change the lighting on my face. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lock that layer because I'm happy with that mask. I'm happy with my layer as well, so I'm going to put a lock on there, and I'm going to now add like a slight vignette. I'm going to try and add some shadow around the edge of my face so it's like it's fading into the background. So I'm going to add a new layer, new layer, okay, and I'm going to get the paint bucket, so I might need to change my gradient tool to the paint bucket tool. I'm going to reset my colours, I'm going to choose the black, and I'm going to fill in that layer black. Now we can't see that, so I'm just going to hide this for the minute. You can see that is a black layer, and then I'm going to get the elliptical marquee tool, and I'm going to draw an oval round about the size of my face there, like that, and that's actually on that black layer. So I'm on the layer 2, the black layer, still on that layer 2, and I'm just going to press delete so you can see my face, and I'm going to go select, deselect, and you can see that's now like a black line. It still doesn't look quite right, so I'm going to blur this. I'm just going to hide the front so you can see what's going to happen here nice and clearly. I'm going to go to filter and blur, and I'm going to apply what's called a Gaussian blur, and here I can set how blurry this is. So a small blur keeps a sharp line, and a big blur, you can sort of see the effect in the preview. Now I'm trying to create sort of a shadow around my face, so I think probably around about that 9 for my picture is about right. So let's click OK. Let's just put the mask back, and you can see now it's just put me further back into that picture. Okay, so I'm happy with that. That would do. It's a nice simple job, but I can do better than that. I can make myself look a little bit more like Tony Stark. So you can see this is sort of a redder colour to match the lighting of the scene. So I'm going to lock that vignette. I'm happy with that. I'm going to go to this layer now. So I'm going to use something here called curves. What curves does is allow me to change the colour. Now I only want it to apply to this layer, the picture of me. So I'm going to click this little button, and so this will only apply to my face. And if I click on this layer, I can sort of change the colours, so that sort of darken me perhaps a bit too much, so I'm just going to look for around about the right place that it looks like I could be part of that picture. Maybe round about there. So I'm happy with that. Let's close that off. So that's my curve. I'm going to lock that so I don't accidentally make any changes. But actually, if we look again at the Tony Stark, let's just hide myself. You can see there's also sort of a shine across his face. So I'm going to add some shine back to my face, sort of pick out the highlights. So I'm going to add another adjustment layer. And this one, I think I will use, what shall I do for this one? Maybe I will go for brightness and contrast. And let's just brighten my face up again. And maybe add a bit more contrast to it. Now I don't want this everywhere, which this is now doing. So I'm going to close it off. I'm going to click on the mask and I'm going to get my paint bucket and fill the mask in black. Now that will mean that none of that has any effect. And then I'm going to get a white paintbrush. I'm going to make it a bit blurry, that's probably too big. Maybe still a bit too big. And I'm just going to paint on the highlights, maybe a bit bigger than that. And maybe opacity, just drop that down a little bit. So I'm just going to paint in some sort of highlights on the face where there would naturally be highlights on my nose, perhaps on my forehead, on my cheeks there. It's just a touch on the lip. And that'll do. So that's giving me some highlights that sort of match the picture. And you can see the effect on the mask here. If we just zoom in, you can see where I painted the white is where it's letting through those highlights on that layer. So I'm happy with that. The only thing that perhaps we now need is the shadow of the mask down on the face. So I'm going to lock that layer off because I'm happy with it. I'm going to add another layer, new layer, click OK. I'm going to get a paintbrush and a black paintbrush, and I'm just going to paint black where the mask was, and I'm going to go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and just choose how sharp that shadow is. So I don't want it too blurry, but likewise I don't want it too harsh. So I'm just trying to make sure we feel that there's some sort of shadow being cast by the mask. I'm going to click OK, and I think that's a good job. That's me as Tony Stark as Iron Man, and that's job done. So I'm going to lock that last layer, I'm going to save it, and that's my finished Iron Man. So save Iron Math. Stick it on my desktop. Job's a good one. Now it's your turn. Put yourself in the picture.